But I feel like, we're coming now back into a more holistic, balanced, integrated understanding of what it means to be a human, a deep understanding of the yin and yang of life, the masculine, the feminine, the left and the right brain, the head and the heart, if you will. There's many ways that you break down and describe that polarity, but this fundamental imbalance, which has been characterized, at least Western society, for many hundreds of years, is not sustainable anymore. And we're starting to see that natural correction take place.
Namaste. You're listening to the Savannah Podcast. Join us on an exploration of Eastern spirituality, yoga philosophy, and conscious living for the new age. This podcast is a production of SavannahSpirit.com, the best place to shop for unique clothing, spiritual handcrafted jewelry, healing gemstones, and fair trade gifts from the Far East. Now, here's your host, Brett Larkin.
Hello, Savannah family. Welcome back to the show. Today we are talking about the moon. This is always such a highly requested topic that I know I love learning more about. We are going to learn how to create more peace, more security, and more purpose in both our personal and professional lives by looking at the phases of the moon. Ezzie Spencer PhD, the author of Lunar Abundance, is here today to tell us how we can flourish when we better understand the lunar cycles. We're going to talk about scheduling. For example, does your current work and social calendar take into account the yang-yin patterns of the moon? I know mine didn't, and this is something I'm now going to work on. We also talk about intention setting, right? What does that really mean? What rituals and actions surround this? And what if your intention is actually to create less of something instead of more? Can you work with lunar abundance in that way? And how, of course, does yoga and meditation play into all of this? Before we dive into our conversation with Ezzie, I want to remind you of the ways you can support the show, support the podcast, keep content like this coming to you for free. And the two ways to do that are by leaving a rating or review here on iTunes. If you're not sure how, go to savannahspirit.com/review, and we have step-by-step instructions. And the other way is to make a purchase on savannahspirit.com, and how fitting, Savannah Spirit has beautiful moonstone available both as single crystals, in gorgeous bracelets and jewelry. So if you're interested in going deeper with all this work and want to grab some moonstone, I highly suggest using that code podcast30 for 30% off your first order. Now, a little bit more about our guest, Dr. Ezzie Spencer. She wants you to flourish. And of course, she's the author of Lunar Abundance. She also has an iTunes podcast, and she actually started out as a lawyer, which she's going to tell us a bit more about. She holds a PhD in therapeutic jurisprudence and women's well-being. And through tracking the moon cycle, it really was her entryway into kind of reclaiming her emotional self, and she's going to tell us all about that. Now she leads workshops all over the world, helping tens and thousands of women cultivate self-worth, creativity, and confidence. Let's dive into today's episode. Ezzie, thank you so much for being with us and for coming on the show.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'm holding your book in my hands, and it's one of the most beautiful books that I think I've purchased recently. It's just so colorful, and oh my goodness, I love it. And those of you listening, the book is Lunar Abundance, Cultivating Joy, Peace, and Purpose Using the Phases of the Moon. So Ezzie, can you tell us a little bit about how you got so interested in the moon, so much so that you started writing books about it?
Right. Well, it is a good question, because I actually started out in a very different line of work. I trained as a lawyer, and I was working in a legal field in my mid-20s. And so that was very far removed from working with the emotional world and with the lunar realms. And really what brought me to this place was that I had this sense of something elemental really missing from my life. I didn't know what it was when I was in that push and hustle and, the more traditional working environment, which is, and particularly in the West, there's very long hours, and there is in the law, which was the area that I was in, a lot of emphasis on the thinking, rational, logical, linear world. And I was living from the neck up, and so many ways. And I did feel this sense of disconnection with myself, with my body, with my own natural rhythms and cycles, with nature, with something really bigger than myself. But I wouldn't have been able to articulate what that was back at the time. But I was seeking what it was that I was, this sense of something missing in my life, this sort of heart yearning, if you will. And at some point, I don't know exactly when, I don't know exactly why, I started looking up at night and tracking the moon cycle, seeing what phase the moon was in. And we're often familiar with the full moon phase. That's probably the most well-known moon phase. But the moon goes through a number of phases in its month-long cycle. And I started to work with each one of those 8 moon phases. And I was really interested to see, as I was writing in my journal, what was going on for me, really how I was feeling, what was my energy level like, what was happening for me in this internal way. And over time I started to find, in fact very quickly, I started to find that there was correlation between where the moon was in the sky and how I was feeling, what was going on for me. And I became fascinated by this. I'm a researcher at heart, so I started to track it. I found that over just a couple of moon cycles, those correlations between where the moon was in the sky and how I was feeling started to repeat. And so this gave me this sense of predictability of my own ebbs and flows. And I started to lean into this more consciously. So I started to really draw back at the times where I was feeling more introverted. And one of the last moon phases, so when the moon is coming back down from full, back down to dark, before it starts another moon phase, for example, is a time when I'm often wanting to draw within, be more reflective and introspective, and then, and really honour that when I was feeling that call rather than just keep on pushing through. And then I started also to find that if I was, really harnessing the energies of those bigger times, those times where I felt more energized, then, to move forwards then and to actually end up being a lot more effective, productive with my work. So that was really my entry way into this. And then I started talking about it and sharing what I was learning because I was so fascinated with it. And as I went deeper and deeper into it and did lots of research, and there's lots of research in the book, I started to set intentions at the new moon phase and then started to work much more intentionally throughout the entire moon cycle with what it was that I wanted to create in my life, how I wanted to really be living in a way which was much more aligned with who I really was, my true purpose here on earth. And I found out, pretty quickly as I started to wake up and to work more intentionally and consciously, both with my own rhythms and flows and cycles, but then more in terms of what it was that I really wanted out of life, what it was that I was really here to contribute. I started to find that the law really wasn't, it was something I was doing, I guess, because it was a very socially acceptable thing to do. There were a lot of external influences on me. There were a lot of really good things that came out of me working in the law as well, but it wasn't actually truly aligned with a deeper purpose that I had. So I started to reimagine my career. I went into legal academia. I did a PhD on wellbeing, looking at women's emotional wellbeing whilst navigating the legal system after being subjected to trauma, and that really opened up an interest in the emotional world for me, which was a neat fit with the lunar work that I was doing. And alongside, in going into that deeper PhD research, alongside that, I was continuing to share what I was learning about the moon. I was starting to hold workshops. I ended up starting a business. I started a blog, and what started out as something which was very much, firstly, a personal practice, and then secondly, a passion project, it ended up being a much, much bigger part of life. And after teaching hundreds of women around the world the practice, I ended up writing a book on it, and it's really just continued to take its wings and fly from there.
And that's the book I now hold in my hands, which is very exciting. I think it's interesting that this kind of, as you say it, like took over your life, basically. And I feel like there's this emergence, or I don't know if it's a renaissance, but I find also in all my social media outlets, like people are really interested in the moon. And I don't know if it's something about feminine energy that's like coming to the forefront right now, or what exactly it is, but I think this isn't coincidental. I feel like there's like a collective energy around this. Before we go more specifically into what's in your book, do you have any thoughts about that? Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I stumbled onto something and started to find this growing interest 10 years ago when I started talking about this. And I was surprised that people were so interested in the moon. When I started talking about this so many years ago, it really came as a surprise to me, but I've only seen that interest grow and grow and grow. So I've been saying very similar things now for so many years, but what the big shift is that suddenly there are a lot of people interested in what it is that I'm saying. So I feel like there is certainly something to explore within that on that collective level. And I feel like, there's a number of things. One is that I think that the moon, certainly in the West, does tend to be associated with the feminine qualities of care and compassion and feelings and emotions and creativity, that Shakti force that so many so many of us have. You don't need to be a woman creating life in your womb in order to be tapped into the creative Shakti force of the universe. But the moon tends to represent those things in the West, and that's not the case across all kinds of cultures, but certainly in the West that tends to be the case. And I feel like we are also seeing a re-emergence and interest in these types of themes, these types of topics, which have, we've lived in a very yang or solar world for a long time where we've seen more of those masculine qualities of get up and go and do and in the celebration of the thinking mind separated, from the whole mind-body split has been a big part, I think, of Western culture for hundreds of years since the time of Descartes. But I feel like, we're coming now back into a more holistic, balanced, integrated understanding of what it means to be a human, a deep understanding of the yin and yang of life, the masculine and the feminine, the left and the right brain, the head and the heart, if you will. There's many ways that you break down and describe that polarity, but this fundamental imbalance, which has been characterised at least Western society for many hundreds of years, is not sustainable anymore, and we're starting to see that natural correction take place. And so I think because the moon tends to then be identified with those feminine qualities, there is a really neat sort of symbolic, metaphorical, fit there. I also feel like many of us, since the time of the Industrial Revolution, really, we've been disconnected from nature, from our natural cycles, our rhythms. If you're a woman, the bleeding cycle tends to have been demonized in many senses, and we're starting to reclaim this sense of what it is that's missing, our sense of connection to our own bodies, to the world, to the natural rhythms, to our environment, to something bigger than ourselves, because we need to. The earth is certainly speaking to us, and many of our bodies are speaking to us, and so we need to start to pay attention. And the moon is certainly, one of many cycles. It's been celebrated and worked with consciously through the ages with lots of different, cultures over millennia, so here on Earth. So I think it's no surprise that we're starting to return back to some of that natural wisdom in the modern age.
I think it's great that we're talking about the feminine, but one of the things I found so interesting about your book is that you actually talked about how the cycles of the moon alternate between yin and yang, which was a very cool concept, and I'm hoping you can tell the listeners about it. Before you do, maybe it would be good, if you're open to it, to quickly explain to folks the cycles of the different phases of the moon that you outline in your book, just in broad strokes, because I think everyone's really familiar with the full moon and the new moon, but maybe not so clear on what comes between and even exactly what those terms mean. Do you mind taking us through that?
Yes, absolutely. And so I'll also just mention that there is a free chart that you can download from my website as well. So it gives a visual representation of what it is I'm about to talk about. And obviously that chart's also in the book, but I'll talk a little bit fast. So just in case people are worried and taking note, there's a lot of information, but there is definitely I break it all down in the book and on my website as well. So exactly right. Many of us are familiar most of all with that full moon phase, but what many of us don't know when we start to work with the moon cycle, although I know that you've got a lot of yogis obviously listening to your podcast, I'm sure also, okay with the new moon, is that the full moon is just the midway point in the cycle. So actually the moon cycle itself starts at the new moon phase, and the moon moves between the sun and the earth and blocks the sun's light from earth. And so that's why it is dark at the time of the new moon. It's also why we don't have, as many sexy pictures pictures on Instagram and Facebook at the new moon phase, because you can't see the new moon, or at least you need to know exactly where to look and, have the right kind of setup and equipment and so forth to be able to see the moon at night. But that's the start of that month-long cycle, and it's the first of the 8 moon phases which I work with in the Lunar Abundance practice. And look, you can divide up the moon cycle. You can have 29 and a half days if you wanted to, 29 and a half phases if you wanted to have a phase every single day in the moon cycle. You could have some people just make it, the 2-phase cycle, where it's the waxing phase as it moves from new to full, and the waning phase and fall back down to new. You can do it however you want to do it. I personally found that working with the phases of the moon was the right amount of time to be able to tune in and consciously work with the entire moon cycle throughout the month without just, getting obsessive and thinking about it all the time, and whilst making it really relevant and practical to my daily life. And that's because in the 8-phase moon cycle, each one of those moon phases lasts for 3 or 4 days apiece. The moon has a slightly elliptical orbit as it goes around the Earth. That's why it changes a little bit all the time. But then of those 8 phases, 4 of them are what I call yin phases, and 4 of them are what I call yang phases. And I got this from Sandra and David Mosley, who do work with the moon in Hawaii. And so basically what that means is that we will have and these come in pairs, the yin and the yang phases come in pairs. So the first of those 8 moon phases, the new moon phase, is a yang phase. And it's yang because, or what a yang phase really means is that it is around the doing, activating, initiating qualities, starting to get projects going. That's why it's a great idea to set an intention at the new moon phase. That's the initiation of the new project, the new intention, the new wish, the new cycle. And then the next phase, so always following a yang phase, will be a yin phase. And so the crescent phase is going to come 3 or 4 days into the moon cycle, and the crescent moon phase is a yin phase. So we'll have 3 or 4 days of the yang moon phase, of the new moon, and then another 3 or 4 days of the yin moon phase, which is the crescent moon. And what happens at the crescent moon phase is that we start to see a little bit of light coming into the sky. And so if you set intention at the new moon phase, then you'll start to see a little bit of movement around that intention at the crescent moon phase. And the Lunar Abundance practice is very intentional. So intention is a big part of it. So there is a particular way to work with your intention through each one of the 8 moon phases. There's a whole chapter on each one of the 8 moon phases in the book that really dives into this. But at that crescent moon phase, that first yin phase, there is that invitation to start to really rest into and practice, because this very much is a practice the yin qualities of being. So if the yang phases are the doing, the yin phases are the being. So that means, maybe taking the foot off the gas, maybe not moving forwards to try to make your intention happen, but to allow yourself to, if you're thinking about your intention as setting your intention as like planting a seed, then at that yin phase, that first crescent moon phase, there is the invitation to water the seed and to not necessarily sort of stand over the pot plant and shout at it and try to, or just like look at it or obsess over it and try to say, well, where is it? What's happening at this time? The yin phase is also a really good permission slip to say, not stack up your calendar with, work obligations, yes, but other obligations aside of work. Just allow yourself a little bit of time and space to breathe, to be really resting into the yin phases, to restore, allow yourself to be listening to what it is that your body's telling about, what it is that the world around you is trying to give you. It might be a time, for instance, to practice a yin style of yoga in the yin phases. Then the next phase.
And sorry, I want to stop you before you go on because I have questions. So I'm like, I already have questions and we're only 2 phases in. So, and it's great because we have time and we can talk about the other phases as we go. This idea of setting an intention, this is a really popular concept. It's popular in yoga. I'm obviously a yoga teacher and training teachers, and we talk about this all the time. But when we come to the moon, right, what does that really mean? I think people often wonder, like, does this mean I'm writing down something I want? Does it mean I'm writing down a way I want to behave? Is it not about writing and it's sort of about putting my hand on my heart and saying something? Like, can you give us an example of what a little ritual or what does intention setting mean in the context of lunar abundance in your work?
It's such a great question because it has a very specific process around it in this practice. And so what I talk about when I talk about intentions is really tapping into the felt sense, so the feeling sense, into the physical sensations in the body. So Lunar Abundance is all about getting out of the head and into the body. Obviously, it's a connection practice. It's about connecting with yourself. And when you're connecting with yourself, a big part of that is really connecting in, I feel, with our physical selves, with the temple, which really houses who we are. And so the intention setting practice in the Lunar Abundance practice is very much about activating the senses to, so say, lighting a candle or working with essential oils or, whatever scent practice really works for you to start to, activate something more than the mind, to drop out of that conscious thinking mind and start to come back into a deeper understanding of yourself, to be more present, to be connecting in with your subconscious mind, to be connecting in with your body wisdom. And so the road to that very much through the senses. So working with scent, making sure that you are in a comfortable position as you're setting an intention. You may want to be activating the taste sense as well, maybe making some beautiful herbal tea, and perhaps putting on some soothing music to really activate the audible senses. So to set up the environment in a way which is going to be multi-sensory is really important. And then to really drop in, to close your eyes, it can be very helpful. And then to allow yourself to really go inwards in a way where you are feeling in your body what is going on that physical somatic level. So allow yourself to, I always, when I'm leading an intention setting practice, and there's also a free meditation on my website which runs through this as well, I work with a Taoist meditation which is called the Inner Smile, which is very much around actually activating the triggers in your mouth by thinking about something that makes you smile. We have triggers in our mouth, so when we're actually physically smiling, then that will activate triggers in our heart space, and that will start to open up our heart energetically. And when we're starting to open up our heart energetically, we're able to tap into the feeling sense, to actually feel those physical sensations in the body. And once we're starting to get into that place, and for many people, myself included, when I started to work with this, I was actually finding that I was feeling pretty numb. And so even just noticing when you're feeling numb can be a really important claiming process as you're starting to drop into that deeper inhabiting of your physical temple of yourself. And then allowing yourself to really go deeply into feeling what it is that you want to create in this moon cycle, in this month ahead. And working with the moon as a natural timekeeper is sort of really the main takeaway from the Lunar Abundance practice. Not that the moon's making us do anything, but that we do have a month ahead to really tap into what it is that we feel we want to create. And when we start to really feel in our body, when we get out of our heads rather than sort of the thinking what it is that, what we might want, we start to tap into our body and we listen to what our body is telling us as we can just ask ourselves, what is it that I really deeply need? What is it that I desire in this time if it's not immediately apparent to us? What we often then find, if we go through that process of deep listening to our body, then, the answers will emanate from within us. We will start to, naturally sense and feel what it is that we do deeply want to create in the month ahead. Not the whole radical overhaul transformation of your entire life, but just, what's the next step for me to take in this month ahead? What do I want to bring into my life in this month ahead? And then how does that feel in my body is the question. So, if you're feeling that sense of warmth and expansion and tingles, that sense of, that's often, the pulsing, a little bit of excitement, that's often an indication that you're on the right track. If you're sort of feeling like there is, something that's making you shut down, feel contracted, feel tight or tense, then perhaps that's not the right intention for you to be setting at this time.
And Ezzie, can I ask you, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to ask you, can the intention be to let something go? Does it have to be about creating, or can it also be about maybe shedding something? Because I know for a lot of us, and especially women, it's like we need to be creating less or like doing less. How does that tie into this?
When you're setting an intention in the Lunar Abundance practice, the intention setting practice is only the very first step of the process. Then what I invite people to do is to sit with their intention each day throughout the entire moon cycle. So if you're setting an intention to let something go, at the new moon phase, and then you're sitting with that intention in meditation for a couple of minutes a day throughout the entire moon cycle, then you're putting your attention and your awareness on what it is that you want to let go of in your life. And that's often counterintuitive. As we know, research has shown that when we are focusing on what it is that we don't want to create, we're sort of giving energy to that. We're putting our awareness on that. We tend to create more of that. So that's why I always suggest that you set an intention about what you want more of, what you would like to create in your life rather than what you want to let go at the new moon phase.
Got it. So you just focus on the positive instead of the negative.
Focus on the positive at the new moon phase, and then you're going to sit with that for that entire moon cycle ahead. So we want to create more of the positive. And then there are particular ceremonies which I suggest you carry out at the full moon phase, which is very much about letting go of that which is holding you back. Having said that, if, for example, you're in a state of overachievement, of overwhelm.
Yeah. What intention should we create if that's where we're at? I'm not asking for myself personally at all.
Asking for a friend. And I'm absolutely the same. And this is why this practice actually has brought into my life a lot more calm and ease and flow and joy, because it's allowed me to very much simplify my life and step away from the overwhelm. And one of the ways that it has done that is to really guide me to set intentions around having more ease, having more simplicity, having more calm. So, for example, if you are feeling like you're in a state of overwhelm and too muchness, set an intention around having a sense of ease and calm and grace in your life, and then really focus on that over the entire moon cycle for each day. As you're sitting in meditation for a couple of minutes a day with your intention really showing up to that intention that you've set, rather than just sort of setting that intention at the new moon and then wandering off and abandoning it, really being devoted to that sense of ease and calm and simplicity in your life. What you will actually find is that things which are taking up your space and time and energy and attention will naturally start to fall away. And perhaps that will be because you have a greater sense of your own boundaries, and you start to find the confidence and the ability to say no to taking on something else which actually isn't in service of your highest good, certainly isn't in service of your well-being and self-care. It might also be that suddenly you have that realization or insight around how you could better organize, streamline your time, the ways that you could get more support in your life, both personally and professionally. And these are the types of things which will start to drop in, materialize, and that you can start to take discerning and specific inspired action on throughout the rest of the moon cycle, say when you come into the yang phases.
So, Ezzie, could this intention sound a little bit like an affirmation that I'm maybe saying to myself when I'm meditating or writing down? How does the meditation piece, I know you mentioned the inner smile meditation, but I'm curious in your own personal meditation practice, or when you work with folks, how they're really bringing the intention into the meditation time.
Well, let's step back to the intention setting process at the new moon, because I hadn't quite finished that process. So then that will reveal it. So firstly, as we're going into the intention setting, so when we are really feeling in our bodies what it is that we want to create in our lives in the month ahead. So for instance, working with the example that we are talking about here, say we want to create more ease and calm, more of a sense of flow, simplicity, say, in our lives. And it can be something like that. It can also be something, more tangible as well. But just say we're working with something, you're feeling overwhelmed, and so you want to feel more ease and calm in your life. And so allow yourself, to really drop into your body and feel what that feels like on physical sensation level. So allow yourself to really feel that sense, say, of your shoulders dropping down. As you're going through, this is the actual intention setting process of the new moon. So maybe your shoulders are dropping down. Maybe you're starting to feel a sense of relaxing. The tension starts to dissipate, more of a sense of calm and peace and expansion and relaxation permeating your whole body. So firstly, really allowing yourself to be in that physical space of feeling calm, feeling that sense of ease. Then allow yourself to tap into the power of elevated emotions. So for example, working with power of gratitude. So you may be then wanting to feel a sense of gratitude, and again, tapping into the physical physical sensation of gratitude in your body for the fact that you've already been successful in cultivating this sense of ease and calm in your life. So allow yourself to firstly feel those physical sensations of ease and calm, what it is that you want to create in your life, then tap into an elevated emotion like gratitude, allowing yourself to feel grateful that you have already created that sense of ease and calm in your life at this time. So that's the process. And then once you've really tapped in on that very physical, somatic, embodied level, the physical sensations and the elevated emotion, again, not just thinking that you're grateful or appreciative, but actually feeling it in your body, then the invitation is to put words around it. So an affirmation, exactly as you said. So you may then want to get out your journal and write, I feel ease and calm in my body. And you might even want to link that to how it is that you're feeling in your physical self. My shoulders relax, for instance. I'm feeling a sense of warmth pervade my belly. Whatever is true and for you and that time. Then when you've written down that your intention, in that affirmation style, then what you can do is actually have that on, say, a piece of paper. Maybe you've got it next to your computer. Maybe if this is going to be something which if you're going to really be working with your intention in the morning, maybe you put it on a post-it note next to your bed. Maybe you put it in the bathroom on your mirror as you're brushing the teeth in the morning. Whatever is, or whenever it is that you make that commitment to really work with that intention on a daily basis, then have some kind of visual trigger of that intention, and then use the word as the trigger to start to enter back into those physical feelings, physical sensations in your body. So the way that I do this is the first thing that I do in the morning when I wake up, I immediately, before my mind goes into all of the chatter and the to-do list and everything that needs to happen, in the day ahead, I'm allowing myself to tap back in firstly to the words. So, I feel this sense of ease and calm, and then that physical sensation in the body of how that feels, and tapping into that elevated emotion again of gratitude. I'm already creating my life. It's already true in my life. And if you're able to add this practice into something that you're already doing in your life. So for instance, if you already have a morning meditation practice, which I do, then it's a matter of, adding in that couple of minutes to your existing practice. If it's a matter of, if you have a daily yoga practice in the evening, then put this intention setting experience in for a couple of minutes in your shavasana at the end. So the idea is for this not to be this new thing that you have to do in your already busy day, but it's meant to be a practice that very easily integrates into your existing habits and rituals in order to enhance your entire experience of your day, but then also of the more conscious practice of working with yourself and working with the moon cycle.
I love how it's so focused on bringing it back to the body and those felt feelings, because even so many of us as yoga teachers, we want to move, we want to flow. It's very often challenging for us to sit still and really just feel what we're feeling, and it's physically, and to slow down like that. And your book really gives some good tips about it. And I think it's something that's so challenging that we all need to practice more. On Thursday, we're back with Ezzie, everyone. So you want to tune in to hear the rest of everything she's going to tell us, especially since we only got through two moon cycles, because I'm peppering her with so many questions. But I do think this getting clear on how this intention setting works is really like the launch pad for how everything else in her book works. So it's really the most important thing to get right. We'll be back on Thursday. For right now, sending you so much love. I hope you have a beautiful day, and remember to look at the moon tonight. Namaste.
You've been listening to the Savannah Podcast. To find out more about Savannah, go to savannahspirit.com or follow Savannah on Facebook at facebook.com/Savannah Spirit. For daily inspiration, check out our blog at savannaeast.com. Be sure to join us next week for a new episode, and thank you for listening to the Savannah Podcast.